Okay, so I want to teach a technique which is a really powerful mindset technique for entrepreneurs that I learned from a coach called Dan Sullivan. And I really want to acknowledge Dan Sullivan because this comes from his idea. And you can learn more about Dan Sullivan. There's a link to his website below this post. So it's called The Gap. And it explains why so many entrepreneurs, so many of us get so frustrated in our day-to-day lives, okay? This is the way we've been trained to see ourselves and the world. So if you look at that circle in the center, that is who you are right now. And being an ambitious, visionary, forward-thinking entrepreneur, you create a vision in your head of who you want to be in the future. So you decide that in the future, you're going to have X amount of revenue. You're going to have X number of employees. You're going to have an epic office space. You're going to be raising venture capital and doing all these deals, buying that dream car, moving into that dream house. You create this beautiful vision of who you want to be in the future. And that's great, right? At least that's the way we've been trained to think. Be ambitious, be bold, think about the future. But the problem is this is also really, really, really dysfunctional if you postpone your happiness to the future. And this is where so many entrepreneurs lose their flow. They delay their happiness in the present until they get that goal. So they create this dysfunctional relationship with their life where they tell themselves, I'm going to be happy when this happens. I'm going to open up this bottle of champagne when that happens. I'm going to celebrate when this happens. And this is called the future gap. This is the gap between where you are now and where you want to be in the future. And it is the cause of so much stress and sadness and misery because you've created this vision of what you need to get to that you're never actually going to get to. Here's why. Because even when you attain that future, what's going to happen next? You're going to create another set of goals for another future. If you achieve all your goals right now in 2015, odds are when it comes to 2015, you're going to create a series of goals for 2017, thus once again postponing your happiness. So Dan Sullivan simply says, stop this nonsense. And instead of looking at the future gap, pay attention to what Dan calls the reverse gap. What's the reverse gap? Rather than being future goal oriented, and there's nothing wrong with that, but rather than postponing your happiness till you would hit that mythical future, what you do is when you wake up in the morning or in your day-to-day life, you remember who you were 2 years ago, rather than thinking about who you want to be 2 years from now. Think about for a moment, where were you 2 years ago? What did your life look like? What did your relationships look like? What was your career like? Think about that. And then think and celebrate how much you've come in the last 2 years. This is the reverse gap. And when you train yourself to not just think about the future, but to also celebrate where you came from, to think about where you were 2 years ago and pay attention to that gap, that's when you're able to create happiness in the now. Scientists actually call this gratitude. And I say scientists because they've actually studied that. One of the, I believe it was University of California, did a study on gratitude where they had two groups of people, Group A and Group B. Okay, and in Group B, they made people in Group B appreciate 5 things about their last 24 hours or the last week every morning for just like a minute to 2 minutes. They found that after 30 days, people in Group B were 25% happier than the control group. And they didn't have to get a 25% raise or 25% more results in their work. All they had to do was spend a few minutes every morning thinking about the reverse gap and thinking about where they had come and expressing gratitude. Instant 25% boost in happiness. So as an entrepreneur, what I want you guys to think about is not just your future goals, but I want you to celebrate yourself and acknowledge where you've come from the past. Okay, this is such an important part about keeping yourself happy, stress-free, and working in flow. Thanks.